I'm Gabe Lullo, and welcome to the Do Hard Things podcast. We're talking to go-to-market leaders and entrepreneurs who have conquered the challenges, the hustle, and the grind. Get ready for real talk, real insights, and no fluff.
But the hardest thing in the world right now is not actually closing deals, it's actually getting somebody's attention.
If you don't have that hook in that first 5 to 10 seconds, guess what? They're going to scroll to the next one.
You need to go in and you need to make it sound like yourself. That's the biggest piece of the puzzle. And I promise you, we can all tell.
The people that are trolls and the people that are haters never done the thing that you're doing.
I love doing this podcast because I get a front row seat to some of the greatest minds in sales.
Gone are the days of saying stay in your lane. When you're an executive leader and you're an enterprise-wide leader, there are no lanes. You've got to be partners.
Curiosity is like when the type of questions you ask is sometimes the value that you bring.
I need you to tell me when you're ready to buy or what you're ready to do. And I think it's changed so much into like adding more value. And if you're not doing that, then you're definitely going to come off as desperate.
High pressure selling is like a dinosaur tactic at this point.
No parent is like, oh, you should be a salesperson when you grow up, right? Everyone's like a doctor, lawyer, whatever crap. It's never salespeople.
It's not your job to motivate people. It's your job to find motivated people.
It's not cockiness. It's not arrogance. It's confidence knowing I know this and I know that I can help you.
From where I started to where I am today is all because I learned how to sell.
And there's too many people who have only been doing this for 5 freaking minutes. Sit down, close your mouth, actually go out there and get yourself beat up. Then come back and tell me if something is dead or not.
That is exactly why I started this podcast, because right there, that's the epitome of doing hard things.
Welcome back to the Do Hard Things podcast with Lexi and Gabe. Today's guest, Andrea Bumstead, is the founder and CEO of CS Impact, a consultancy providing fractional leadership and strategic advisory services to B2B SaaS companies. Known for turning customer success into a revenue engine, Andrea has helped growth stage companies generate millions in incremental revenue through outcome-driven retention and expansion strategies. An award-winning thought leader in the CS space, Andrea is the creator of the 15-minute QBR, a viral framework celebrated for its practical, executive-ready approach to customer alignment. She is a sought-after speaker and advisor and will be chairing the upcoming Customer Success Summit in Toronto. Andrea, welcome to the show.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Do Hard Things podcast. I'm your host, Gabe, and we have Lexi with us as always. And we also have Andrea, and I'm so excited to have you as our guest today, Andrea. You and I have been connected here for about, I believe, almost a year now, going back and forth a little bit, and we're now having you on the show, and we're so pumped about this. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. I'm glad we could finally make this happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were just talking in the green room about, I think you're the first guest that does customer success exclusively. And we're so pumped to get into it because it's so important piece of the business, right? Client success, customer success, obviously retention, especially in today's day and age, keeping a customer is so important right now when it comes to, the outreach that companies are trying to get new business. But at the end of the day, they also have to double down on keeping that business. And that's what you are an expert in. So I'd love to hear your origin story. Like, where did this start for you? How did you get into being a go-to-market strategist and turning, CS into a revenue engine? How do you start? What's your story?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I love big, meaty challenges. So throughout my career, I have followed really big, hard problems. I love digging in. And so I would say, if I go back a little bit, where I actually got into customer success was at Procore. So Procore was founding a brand new customer success team here in Canada. So I founded that team, grew it from 4 to 35 people across 5 functions. We had hyper growth during that time. We went from 65 million to 550 million in less than 4 years in a successful IPO. So that's where I really sort of cut my teeth on world-class customer success. And then from there, I wanted to take that experience to smaller organizations. So I was a vice president of customer success at revenue.io, formerly RingDNA. I'm sure many of you have heard of. And then I went to a company called Kindsight, which is in the fundraising intelligence space, formerly called iWave. And in each of these sort of companies, Procore was hyper growth. Ring DNA and Revenue.io, they were launching some brand new products, rethinking their post sales motion. And then Kindsight, they had just acquired 2 companies and were completely rethinking customer experience. So that's my customer success journey. And then from there, my segue into creating my own business was actually really interesting. But the company I was with, so Kindsight, they went through a leadership restructure. I was looking for my next role. I interviewed with over 30 companies. I talked to 25 people a week, and I added 50 people to my network a week. Okay, so I was hardcore about finding my next vice president of customer success role. And after interviewing with all of these companies, so about 7 months in, I learned 2 really important lessons. Um, One is that companies don't want to take a risk on a senior leadership hire right now. They're very risk adverse. Unless you check every box, size, stage of company, industry, came through their network. It's not like 5 years ago where, you could take a director and you'd make them a VP and you'd say, well, we'll just train them up, right? It's not like that. Companies want someone who's done the role for, 5+ years, 10 years, seen success. They didn't want to take any risk. So that was the first lesson I learned. The second lesson I learned, which was really interesting, is that I didn't want to take a risk either. So when I spoke with these companies, what I realized is that all of them had some really, really big problems. Like we're talking failed mergers and acquisitions, churn problems, growth problems, no money, bootstrapped, right? Or not profitable, leadership turnover and morale problems. It just sort of went on and on. And I thought, I could help a number of companies solve problems at scale at very low risk to both them and to me, right? So you can hire me for however long you want. I'll come in, work on a big meaty problem. When we've solved that, you can decide to keep me or not. So there's very little risk for the company and for me. And I found this new model works very well. And so this is how CS Impact was born just a few months ago.
That's an awesome story. I love that. That's cool. Do you remember the first time in your career? I know you said you started out in sales when you really had to own the number. And how did you really handle that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, yes, I did start my career in sales. I actually started my career in marketing, believe it or not. So, marketing, then I was promoted into sales. I did field sales. Okay. So, this is before SaaS was like truly existed. This is like in the on prem age, right? I was doing field sales and I had a number and a quota that I was hitting. And I will say that the lessons that I learned in sales, right? Like hustle, perseverance, right? You get after it. And just the core foundation of like selling skills, right? How to talk to people, really. Um, all of those skills have served me very well on the post sale side. In fact, as the founder of CS Impact, I actually train customer success teams on things that are very much sales skills, like having a consultative approach, like commercial negotiations, like how to own a number and speak to a number, right? And use metrics and data to your advantage. So, a lot of the skills that I gleaned early in my career in sales, I actually apply very much so to my clients and what I'm doing today.
Let's double down on that because it's so cool, right? I mean, you really followed not only your career into this, but also you followed the sales journey,
Mm.
right? You start in the sales journey with marketing, right? And then it passes to sales and then it passes to customer success. So it's interesting that your approach was really the same approach that prospects and then soon to be clients go through as well. And also with Procore and obviously Revenue.io, these are great brands. There's must be a lot of chaos or things that you went through in those 3 different roles within the sales journey. What did that, teach you really, that no playbook or maybe a leadership course that could ever teach you? Because there is no school or college to go to for sales, right? So what did that stuff teach you to get to where you are today, and how do you apply it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And in fact, when you talk about the funnel, I never actually thought about that. Of course, like I followed the whole bow tie, right? Is what I did
Right. Yeah.
unintentionally, but that's what happened. I started in
Yep.
marketing with, right, like our pipeline gen and how we were going out to
Yep.
market, and used to, host events, right? Get information to the sales team, train the sales team, then sales. So I did sales for 4 years, right? Where I had a quota. And man, I was hustling in that role. I probably never hustled so hard in my life as when I was in sales, right? And then I transitioned into post sales. So I did first really in implementation, right? So I was a manager of implementation. So really focused on the onboarding. At that time, I was almost like a semi SE, right? Sales engineer. And then really transitioned to customer success. So you're absolutely right. I followed the bow tie in my career unintentionally. But back to your question, like, what did I sort of learn, or what was the common thread or the challenge? I think, every organization I've been in has been different and yet somewhat the same, right? Especially the SaaS companies that I've been in and the work that I do now. They move really fast. Like you have to be able to make decisions without having all of the information. Um, and then, of course, you're building a foundation for scale, right? You're always looking to what is next. I think, I'm often asked what sort of a philosophy or a motto that I follow. And one motto that I do follow is what's called the 70% rule. So I learned this actually from someone in finance. There's another story. But anyways, she taught me that essentially, if you are 70% sure of something, you better go. Like just that's it. Like just go. And then you're gonna commit 110% to making sure that it's successful. Right? And if you're committing and it's not going well, you always have permission to pivot. You can change your mind, essentially. But what this rule does for me, and I think a lot of other people who have adopted this since I've started talking about it, is it allows you to always be decisive, right? You're never in that sort of spinning, like, what should I do? Should I do this? I don't know, right? You commit. You're like, okay, if I'm 70% sure that this is the right motion, the right playbook, the right path, the right revenue driver, the right business model, whatever it is, whatever the thing is. I even use this with my friend she was like, should I go on vacation? At the time, she had like a 6-month-old baby and a 2-year-old. And I was like, well, are you 70% sure that this would be a good idea? She was like, yeah, I think 70%. I was like, do it. Just go, right? Like, just book it. And then, commit 110% to making sure that, like, it's going to be successful, right? And I also apply that in my own business where I'm like, should I do outreach, or like should I have an outbound strategy? What's my inbound strategy? Right? Like, should I try this? Should I offer a discount here? Should I create a newsletter? Right now, you can't do everything, but it also just prevents me from just spinning on things, right? And as a leader, you have to be decisive, and you don't have time to gather all the information and be 100% sure. So 70% is my motto. You feel good at 70%, you better move.
I like that a lot, and I really like how you pointed out how a lot of people are scared to pivot, change their mind, but it's totally okay. And speaking of challenges, looking back, was there an early mistake or challenge that you're actually glad you made early on?
I've made a lot of mistakes in my career, okay? That's how you learn. You can't be afraid of failure. So I've made a lot. There's a couple that really stand out, right? As with most people, you've got like a couple where you're like, like when you asked me that question, I was like, I've got like two pretty big ones. I should either pick this one or this one. So I'm going to tell you one of the bigger ones for me. But when I was a vice president of customer success, and it was a big role that I was stepping into. Okay, like there was a lot of challenges. There were challenges on the team. There was challenges in the go to market. approach. We were making a lot of changes in the organization, and there was a lot of moving pieces, right? And then personally, I also had a lot of moving pieces. I have 3 children, one of which was a baby when I was there. Okay, the youngest was a baby, so I've like 3 very young children. And I'd say the biggest mistake that I made was not getting enough support. So I sort of like I jumped into this role. I had, 3 very young children. There was a lot of big meaty challenges in it. Um, and I was also trying to like save some money during that time. There's just a lot happening. But when I got into that role, I immediately felt like I didn't have enough support, right? Like I didn't have enough sort of mentorship. I didn't have enough knowledge in certain areas. I didn't have enough know-how, business acumen, right? Like I was owning a P&L for the first time. So there was a lot of like firsts for me. And what I did was like just put my head down and get to work. Okay. Like that was my motto of like, okay, I'm gonna work hard at this, and I equated hard work with like, then I'll be successful. Whereas what I really needed to do was get some help, whether that was outside help or inside help or whatever. I needed more support, right? Filling those knowledge gaps, mentorship, maybe a course on business acumen, speaking the language of the CFO, owning a P&L, right? And so I think that was my biggest lesson there is like my whole, I'll just grind through this attitude. Which like I grew up on a farm, okay? I grew up on a dairy farm. So like you just grind through the problem is kind of ingrained in who I am. But that approach didn't serve me well in that role. So I'd say was a really big lesson for me in my career.
Wow, that's incredible. So let's talk about these hard things, right? Because the theme of the show is hard things. You're already talking about it. So let's double down on this because when it comes to building and scaling, right? It's one thing to start and put together processes and procedures in place when you're small. But when you're scaling and growing quickly, there's a lot of high pressured moments and there's a lot of high pressured points that you have to, really go through and push through. And you really don't know about it until you're doing it. When you said before, you had to ask for support. So let's give some support to some of the people who are doing what you're doing or attempting to at least do what you do. What are those things, those hard parts that you really see when scaling CS teams that most founders that are listening right now or executives really don't see coming that they need to be prepared for?
This is a great question.
Okay.
What would help them, right? As they're scaling, things move really quickly, right? When you're scaling, there's a lot of pressure, particularly from your board when you're scaling, right? To do things right, to drive revenue and some efficiency, right? Um, here's a few things that I would recommend. Um, One is leverage your support. Okay. So like know what's out there that can help you. I'll name a couple things. I'll give you a couple of examples, but like there's so much out there. This is like I'll just tell you from my own experience, right? But like I've gotten tremendous value from Pavilion, right? So I'm a member of Pavilion. I've taken their CRO school, CCO school, AI and automation, fractional leadership. Like you can tell, I've taken a lot of their courses. Okay. But every one of them, I walked away with something very tangible. In fact, I took notes in a lot of them because I was like, even if I haven't had this situation yet, it's coming. At some point in my career, this is, I'm going to face this, right? Like there was a great session I was in on how to stand up a support organization. Now, I've managed support organizations. I've never stood one up from the ground up, right? So I took notes. And there was another one on pricing and like your pricing strategy and the different pillars of a pricing strategy, which I was like, okay, well, I've never actually done that. I've been part of price changes, price increases, right? Changes in pricing strategy, but I've never actually gotten that deep into it. So I took notes on that as well. So Pavilion's a great resource. I'm also a huge fan of Winning by Design and their revenue architecture course. I'm actually an ambassador for Winning by Design, which basically just means that I like it a lot and I tell people about it. That's it. I don't get a kickback. Like there's nothing like that, right? But I really like their course. That gave me the foundations of like SaaS companies, how they scale, how they grow, the phases and the stages they go through, what's normal, what's outside of normal, right? In terms of like, I'll give you an example, but if you're running too many go-to-market motions and you're only, this big as a company, so let's say you're running 3 go-to-market motions and you're 20 million in ARR, that's a recipe for disaster, okay? Because each go-to-market motion is really expensive and you can't run 3 if you're 20 million. I never knew that before, right? So I walked out of that course being like, oh, well, that's what happened over there at that company, right? But I didn't have a frame of reference. So my point is like go and get support, whether it's in formal communities or networks. Like I'm part of Women in Revenue, Wednesday Women, a whole bunch of customer success groups, right? So go get support. I also have leveraged an executive coach twice in my career. Okay. Um, to up level me as a leader. She really changed the way I communicated, which, by the way, is actually really one of the most fundamental differences between the leadership sort of rungs, if you will, is how people communicate. So, an executive coach, whatever it is, like assess your gaps. And you'll know your gaps because if you get into a conversation and you're like, I have no idea what we are talking about, that's a gap. Okay. So go and fill the gap. And there's lots of different ways to do that.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And in your experience, what do you think the real difference is between a CS team that really fuels growth and one that kind of stalls out over time?
Oh, this is a meaty question for a CS leader. But essentially, if I were to boil it down to one thing, okay, the difference between whether you're going to survive as a customer success organization or whether you're going to thrive, okay? There's one thing that is going to make all the difference, and that is business acumen, and you got to tie yourself to the money, okay? You're going to tie yourself to the money. You tie yourself to the revenue. I always say customer success is sitting on all the money, okay? If you're a $50 million organization, that organization is counting on customer success to renew 50 million, okay? You're sitting on all the revenue, and it's that 50 million that allows for investment in product, right? Investment in marketing, investment in people, investment in sales, right? It is like what keeps the company going. So customer success is sitting, literally sitting on all the money in the organization. So number one, if you're a CS leader, you need to realize this, right? Okay. If you're a $20 million company, sales is going to bring in 8 million this year, and you're renewing 20 million. You are renewing 20 million. Okay. Let me just can I not just overstate that enough? You are sitting on all the money. So you're responsible for it. You're the steward of it, right? And you're responsible to protect and to grow it. And so need to know your true value to the organization and how to tie everything that you are doing to the stewardship and the growth of that money.
That's incredible. I mean, I really hope every single person just played that back on their iTunes like 5 times because that's I mean, as a CEO, that's so important to hear, and it's so true. Let's talk about the people side of all of this, right? Because there's technology, there's tools, there's CS tools, there's churn opportunities and triggers, and of course, a lot of AI is being of course coming into every piece of business. But getting away from all of that, you have to build a team and find great people to synergistically work and, of course, protect that money and run through walls to do so. So, how do you find and create an environment and source a team of people that are all rowing in the same direction, I like to say, in the CS department and are not blaming everyone else like we see on those other stages of the business, marketing and sales? Because we see marketing and sales blame each other all the time over leads, right? But where does CS come in and how do they, stand out? And how do you find a team to do that and run, again, roll in the same direction?
Yeah, another great question. So I mean, one, I could talk about hiring, right, and how to find the right people, get the right people in seat, okay? But let me just tell you this. Customer success teams are not trained, okay? So it doesn't matter if I go out and find stellar CSMs, okay? Top companies, right, who have managed Fortune 500 companies, who have been in CS for 10 years, okay? Let's say that I hire that group of people. Because CSMs are not trained, unlike sales, right, where you have full sales enablement, and you also have value selling, medpick, medic, spiced, challenger, I could go on, okay?
Channel,
You have
all of that. Perfect.
methodologies,
Yep. Yep.
right?
Yep.
So if I get a group of CSMs, even if I have hired very well, they are not on the same page, okay? Because organizations run customer success differently. Every organization, it's not like sales, right? Sales, you go into one company, another company, and another one, it all looks kind of the same, okay? Not customer success. It's going to look very different. And CSMs are not trained. So, for me to assume that they're going to be able to row in the same direction is fundamentally false, okay? They will not. This CSM is going to be a hero. He's going to do everything himself. This CSM wants process and procedure, okay? And she's going to want a lot of support. This one runs an EBR, an executive business review, this way. This one runs an EBR this way, okay? They don't row in the same direction. And so this is, and I will die on this hill, okay? This is why customer success teams have to be trained. You have to put rigor into their training and get them all on the same page of the foundations of customer success, even if they are rock stars who have been in the business for 10 years. When you get a group of CSMs together, you need to train them so that they all row in the same direction. So they manage their books of business in similar ways. They run risk plays in similar ways. They forecast in similar ways. They run executive business reviews in similar ways, right? I find that this is a fundamental difference between sales, and you correct me if I'm wrong, in customer success, but like we have not been trained, okay? And so we do not row in the same direction. In fact, we row in every direction all at the same time.
I love that. And we can tell you're passionate and you've done this work across many industries, teams, growth stages. After all that, what still lights you up about helping and grow these CS teams?
It's a great question, too. I mean, there's so much work to be done, right? Like if I just even use that training example, there are so many customer success teams out there that need training so that they do row in the same direction. There's so many companies that have churn problems that have no idea where to start. I'm going to tell you a little story, but I've been interviewing a number of go-to-market leaders on why churn is up across the board, okay? Which it is across SaaS as a whole. It doesn't matter if you're sub 10 million or if you're a billion-dollar company, with the exception of maybe some hyper growth AI companies, like churn is up sort of across the board. And even with those AI companies, there's a strong prediction that they're going to have a churn problem, right? That people are experimenting with their solutions. So churn is coming for you, okay? But I've been interviewing go-to-market leaders on why it's up across the board, what's broken, and what's working. And here's what I realized. And please don't take offense, salespeople, anyone listening, okay? Here's what I've realized just in the past few days after talking with a number of go-to-market sales leaders. Sales does not understand churn. Okay? It's just not very well anyways. So when I talk with different leaders and when I talk with sales leaders in particular, the answers that I get as to why churn is up, I'm like, have you ever thought about churn? But anyways, some good answers, I will say, but some not so great. And so here's what concerns me is vice presidents of sales become CROs, okay? Very often. Who manages customer success? Usually the CRO, okay? So I actually predict that we have a number of CROs in seat that don't fundamentally understand customer success, don't fundamentally understand churn. So there's a lot of work to be done there to just get on the same page, right, at a leadership level as to how we actually solve churn and the root causes of it. And who do you think eventually becomes CEO? Very often. The CRO. Okay? Do you see the problem that we're perpetuating? Right? It's like VP to CRO to CEO. If you do not fundamentally understand churn and how customers get value, right? This is very problematic. So this is my point is there's a lot of work to be done here.
Yeah. And let's talk about that work because you obviously are with your business and the success you've had, the expansion. And of course, you talked about like the current state of the industry and what really needs to happen and a massive problem to your point, because sales, is usually where that CEOs are coming from in many cases, or they're product people, right? They're either the engineers that develop the solution and they go to CEO, or they're someone that is really good at sales and generate revenue, but it's very rarely where they're coming out of CS. So with all of that it's said, what does this look like for you and how do you want to really define your success, whether it's personally or professionally, to impact the industry in the future?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm only one person, but I help as many companies as I can, right? So solve big, meaty problems, expansion problems, churn problems, training problems, right? Reorganizing their teams. So that's one way. Another way is I do a lot of knowledge sharing, just like this on a podcast. I came up with the 15-minute QBR framework, which is now in the hands of over 5,000 people. So I'm viral on LinkedIn, and I sent out the framework to over 5,000 people. So anything I can do to up-level the profession, up-level, right, like customer success as a whole, whether that's company by company, right, that I'm working with, or whether that's sort of at scale through a 15-minute QBR framework, through podcasts like this. You can follow my posts on LinkedIn, right, and the content I put out there. But, as one person, I'm certainly trying to do my part to up level customer success and generate a true understanding of what the function is and how important it is. Remember, we are sitting on all of your money.
That's awesome. Yeah. Customer success is definitely evolving fast. There's AI, automation, shift in buyer expectations. How are you staying ahead of the curve?
Mm, so it's hard to stay ahead of the curve. Let me just say that, right? There's a lot happening right now, even the AI curve, right? Like I use AI on a daily basis. I have a number of like custom chat GPTs. I'm experimenting with agents, right? And then I get newsletters that come into my inbox about what's happening in the industry and like who's doing what. But like it's a lot. And like I think a lot of us are just overwhelmed by how fast things are moving, how much AI is changing things. So I just say, I'm like the rest of everyone else. I'm doing my best.
Yeah, absolutely. So this has been a great show. I have one final ask of you. There's a lot of CEOs, new founders, even CSMs that are listening to the show. Something that the people that are listening to, what's one thing, maybe growth has slowed down, maybe churn is creeping up. What can they do this week to really get back on track and start this journey of low churn and holding all that money, like you mentioned multiple times? I love that in place and intact.
Yeah. I mean, so I'm going to toot my own horn here for a second.
Do it.
This is the real answer, okay? This is the real honest answer. There's not a single thing that you're going to be able to do by yourself, okay? Not a single thing, okay? Whatever got you here, you're not going to turn around in a week. So you better go get an expert, myself included, right? Go get an expert to dig in and figure this thing out for you, because there's no way that, like, because churn is like, it starts like a year in advance. So if you have a churn problem right now or a growth problem, there's absolutely nothing that you're going to do in the next week to solve that. Just go get an expert.
I love that. And thank you so much for coming on the show. Who is the best person that should reach out to you? And is LinkedIn the best place to do so?
Yes, yes. You can reach me on LinkedIn. I'm about to spin up an Instagram page as well, so you can follow CS Impact. And if you're a go-to-market leader, wanting help, wanting to talk strategy, not sure where to start, you're a CSM struggling in your role, feel free. You can reach out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Andrea, for coming on the show. We had such a good time with you, learned so much. And for all of those listening, keep doing hard things. And Lexi and I will see you on the next one.